The morning felt normal at first. The light came through the kitchen window in a soft and quiet way. It touched the clean counters and the smooth floor. Heidi sat at the kitchen island with a mug of coffee in both hands. The coffee had already gone cold, but she did not notice. She was watching her husband. Travis stood across from her. He held a single sheet of paper. He cleared his throat and straightened his back. He looked serious and calm, like he was giving a work presentation. His voice was steady, too steady. He said the house needed order. He said order needed rules. He began to read. Heidi did not interrupt. She had learned not to. For 7 years of marriage, she had learned when to stay quiet. She watched his face instead. She noticed how relaxed he looked. She noticed how sure he felt. Her name was Heidi. She was 32 years old. She lived in Louisville, Kentucky. Until that morning, she believed her marriage was hard but possible. She believed it could still work if she tried harder. She worked as a senior accountant at Thornwood Manufacturing. The job was demanding, especially during closing periods. But she was good at it. She had spent 8 years building trust there. People depended on her work. That mattered to her. Travis worked in pharmaceutical sales. He traveled often. His income was higher most years. He liked to remind her of that. He talked about his success often. What he did not say was that her steady pay kept their life stable when his commissions dropped. He read the first rule. All purchases over $50 needed discussion and approval. His approval. Heidi blinked once. She said nothing. The second rule came next. Dinner had to be ready at 6:30 when he was home. If she needed to change the time, she had to give notice. And a reason. He would decide if it was acceptable. The third rule followed quickly. The kitchen and living room had to be clean every night, no matter how tired she was. He wanted to wake up to a neat house. His voice never changed. Each rule sounded calm, reasonable, polite. Polite. Inside Heidi, something tight began to form. She thought back to the early days. When she met Travis, she was 23. He was confident and older. He seemed sure of everything. She liked that. She was still finding her way. Being chosen by him felt important. Now he moved on to the next rules. He talked about her clothes. He said she needed his approval before social events. He talked about her mother. Visits were limited to twice a month. Anything more needed permission. He talked about her coworkers, especially male ones. She had to report names and details. He talked about response times to his messages. 15 minutes, even during work hours. By the time he reached Rule 10, Heidi felt very still inside. Not angry, not scared, just quiet. She listened to him reach Rule 15. The final rule said that all shared decisions would be made together. But if they disagreed, his choice would be final. He placed the paper down neatly. He looked pleased. He waited. Heidi studied his face. She had kissed that face thousands of times. She once imagined growing old with that face across the table. Now it looked unfamiliar. She realized something then. She was not his partner. She was a problem he wanted to control. She took a slow breath. She asked if she could add one small thing. Travis looked surprised. Then he smiled. He agreed easily. He said marriage was about teamwork. He said he wanted her to feel included. The words felt heavy in the air. Heidi felt her heart beat faster, but her voice stayed calm. She had already made a choice inside. She did not know where it would lead. She only knew she could not go back. She said she wanted to add one rule. Any rule made by one person had to apply to both people equally. Same limits. Same expectations. Silence followed. Travis paused. Then he nodded. He said it sounded fair. He said he had no issue with equality. He thought the moment was over. He did not yet understand, Heidi explained slowly. If purchases needed approval for her, they needed approval for him too. If her clothes needed review, so did his. If her movements needed tracking, his did as well. She spoke evenly. She did not raise her voice. She watched his jaw tighten. She said every rule applied to both of them, or none of them applied at all. The kitchen felt smaller. The hum of the refrigerator sounded loud. Travis frowned. He said she was being difficult. He said she was twisting things. She said she was being fair. She reminded him of his own words about partnership. He stood up fast. The stool scraped loudly. He said the talk was over. He said they would continue later, when she could think clearly. Heidi stayed seated. She said her rules still stood. Rules had to be equal, or there were no rules. Travis stared at her. Something flashed in his eyes. Fear. Quick and sharp. He turned and left the room. His steps were heavy on the stairs. A door slammed. Heidi sat alone with her cold coffee. Her hands did not shake. Her heart raced, but she felt steady. She knew something had changed forever, for years. His control had worked because she allowed it. She had been afraid. She had stayed silent. That silence had ended. The house felt quiet after he left. To quiet. And as Heidi sat there, she wondered what Travis would do next now that his rules no longer worked. Part 2. The rules did not begin that morning. They only became visible then. The truth was that control had entered the marriage slowly, one small step at a time. Heidi could see that clearly now. Looking back, she noticed moments she once ignored. At the time, each moment felt small. Together, they formed a cage. In the first year of marriage, Travis commented on a red dress she owned. He said it showed too much skin. He said married women should dress with respect. His voice was calm. He sounded caring. Heidi laughed and agreed. She gave the dress away without arguing. It felt easier. It was just clothing. Later, he spoke about one of her friends. Brianna was loud, he said. Too direct. He said Heidi seemed different after seeing her. Less kind, less agreeable. He said this with concern, like he was protecting Heidi from harm. Heidi believed him. She saw Brianna less often. Then, not at all, years passed. The changes continued. Preferences became expectations. Expectations became habits. Habits became rules even before they were written down. Travis liked to review their finances alone. He said numbers stressed Heidi out. He questioned her male coworkers. He said it was about her reputation. He corrected her cooking. He fixed her tone. He suggested better ways for her to speak, sit, dress, and respond. Each comment came with a smile. Each correction came with patience. He said he was helping her become better. Heidi believed him. Her mother noticed the change first. During one visit to her mother's home in Frankfurt, Heidi sat at the old kitchen table. The table had scratches from years of use. It felt familiar. Safe. Her mother watched her closely. Then she spoke. She said Heidi seemed smaller. Not thinner. Not weaker. Smaller inside. She said Heidi used to fill rooms. Now, she apologized before speaking. Heidi laughed it off. She blamed stress. She blamed work. She said marriage required compromise. She defended Travis easily. She had practiced those words many times. On the drive home, she pushed the conversation out of her mind. But her mother had been right. Heidi had learned to shrink at work. She tried to stay herself. Thornwood Manufacturing depended on her. Her numbers were clean. Her reports were solid. Her supervisor, Deborah, noticed her skill. Deborah spoke about leadership, about growth. Heidi smiled and deflected. She remembered the promotion she once refused. A team lead role, more responsibility, a pay increase. She had been excited. She bought wine to celebrate. That night, Travis asked questions about hours, about meals, about the house, about the future. His voice stayed gentle. By the end of the talk, Heidi felt guilty for wanting more. She declined the role the next day. Deborah never pressured her again. That memory burned now. After the morning of the rules, the house felt tense. Travis did not mention the list again. He spoke less. When he did speak, his tone was cold. It was a punishment Heidi knew well. In the past, silence had terrified her. She would replay conversations. She would apologize. She would bend. This time, something felt different. She went to work and focused fully. Tasks felt clearer. Problems felt solvable. She stayed late one evening because she wanted to. not because she feared consequences. Deborah noticed, she said. Heidi seemed present again, stronger, more awake. When Heidi asked about future roles, Deborah smiled. She said she had been waiting for that question. At home, Travis waited. He sat in the living room one night. The rules lay on the table. His posture looked unsure. He admitted he might have gone too far. He suggested changes. Small ones. He offered to loosen limits on clothes. On visits to Heidi's mother, he did not mention money. Heidi listened calmly. She asked about the financial rule. Travis stiffened. He said that rule was important. Necessary, Heidi repeated her condition. Equality or nothing. His voice sharpened. He accused her of twisting his words. She asked him to explain why rules should differ. He could not. Anger replaced. Control, he left the house that night in a rush. The car sped away. Heidi stayed behind. She picked up the list. She read every rule again. This time she felt clarity instead of fear. Every rule again. This time she felt clarity instead of fear. She poured a glass of wine. She began to think about what came next. Travis returned late. He slept in the guest room, for the first time in years. Heidi felt relief. The next morning, Travis suggested counseling. His voice was rough. He did not look at her. Heidi agreed, with one condition. She would choose the therapist. He did not like it. But he agreed. In the days that followed, he tested her. Small comments. Silent sighs. Disapproval without words. Heidi did not react. She began waking early. She exercised. She reached out to Brianna. The response was warm, easy. She accepted invitations from coworkers. She said no to Travis when needed. He watched her change. Fear grew behind his eyes. The night before therapy, he tried again. He spoke softly. He said everything he did came from love. From protection. Heidi listened. Then she said love did not need control. His face hardened. He said the therapist would decide. Heidi slept. Well, that night she did not know what would happen in that office. But she knew one thing. She would not shrink again. And as the therapy session approached, Travis believed he could still win. Part 3. The therapy office was quiet and softly lit. The chairs were placed in a small circle. A box of tissues sat on a low table. Heidi noticed everything. She always did. Travis sat beside her, relaxed in his seat, his shoulders loose, his face pleasant. He wore the expression he used. With clients, friendly, calm, trustworthy. The therapist introduced herself and explained the rules of the session. She spoke clearly and slowly. She asked them to speak one at a time. She said honesty mattered more than comfort. Travis nodded often. He smiled. He looked like a man ready to cooperate. She asked Travis to speak first. He described their marriage as mostly happy. He said they had small communication problems. He said Heidi had changed recently. He said she seemed distant and ungrateful. He mentioned her job and said her ambition caused stress at home. He said he only wanted balance and peace. His voice was smooth. His words sounded reasonable. Heidi listened without reacting. Her hands rested in her lap. Her breathing stayed steady. When it was her turn, she spoke plainly. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She explained the rules. She described how they were presented. She spoke about the years before that morning. The slow loss of friends. The limits. The silence. She took the paper from her bag and read several rules aloud. The room felt still. The therapist looked at Travis and asked him about the rules. He said they were suggestions, not commands. He said Heidi misunderstood. He said she exaggerated. The therapist asked how he felt when Heidi asked for equal rules. Travis paused. He frowned. He said it felt mocking, like she was making fun of him. The therapist asked what problem the rules were meant to solve. Travis spoke in circles. He said structure, stability, boundaries. The therapist asked who the boundaries were. For silence followed. Travis shifted in his seat. His jaw tightened. The therapist spoke carefully. She said that rules for one partner only were not shared agreements. She said equality mattered in healthy partnerships. Travis's smile disappeared. He accused Heidi of manipulation. He said she planned everything. He said she wanted to make him look bad. The therapist asked for examples. He had none. The session ended in tension. Travis stood quickly. His face was tight. Heidi felt lighter than she had in years. In the car, Travis exploded. He said the therapist was biased. He said Heidi poisoned her opinion. His hands shook on the steering wheel. Heidi looked out the window. She said she told the truth. He said her truth was twisted. She turned to him. She told him she would not accept unfair treatment again. She said they would be equals or nothing. The words hung between them. At home, Travis went straight to the guest room. He made phone calls late into the night. Heidi heard his voice through the wall. Urgent, angry. She slept anyway. The weeks that followed were heavy. Travis grew colder. He watched her closely. He tested her limits. He sighed loudly when she disagreed. He criticized small choices. Heidi stayed calm. She did not explain herself. She did not apologize. She felt stronger each day. She met with a lawyer quietly. She learned her options. She began to document everything. Not with anger. With care, the second therapy session came. Travis refused to listen. He argued. He stormed out before it ended. That was the last session they attended together. 2 weeks later, Heidi filed for divorce. Travis was shocked. He yelled. He begged. He threatened. He promised change. He accused her of betrayal. Nothing moved her. The process was slow and painful. Papers, meetings, long days at work. Deborah promoted Heidi. She told her she was proud. Brianna helped her pack. Her mother held her hand. The divorce took months. When it ended, Heidi stood outside the courthouse in the fall air. The sun warmed her face. She breathed deeply. She felt free. Travis's life fell apart quietly after that. His job suffered. His anger showed. People noticed. He moved away. Heidi stayed. She built a new life. A small apartment. Her own rules. Her own voice. She filled rooms again. Sometimes she thought about that morning in the kitchen. The paper. The coffee. The silence. One rule had changed everything. As she locked the door of her apartment one night, she smiled softly. Her future was finally hers, but somewhere far away. Travis was starting over, and Heidi knew. The past was not fully done with her yet. Part 4. Life did not become peaceful all at once after the papers were filed. Freedom came slowly in uneven steps. Heidi learned that leaving control behind did not mean fear disappeared overnight. Some mornings she woke up calm. Other mornings her chest felt tight for no clear reason. Still, she kept moving forward. Her new apartment was small. The walls were plain. The rooms echoed when she first walked inside. She stood in the doorway on her first night and listened to the quiet. It felt strange. No rules, no schedule. No voice telling her what should happen next. She placed her keys on the counter and sat on the floor. She laughed softly, then cried for a moment. Not from sadness alone. From release. At work, change continued. Heidi arrived earlier than needed. She left when her work was done. She spoke in meetings without rehearsing her words first. People listened. Some even nodded. Deborah asked her to lead a project. Heidi said yes without checking with anyone else. The decision felt simple. It felt right. Travis did not let go easily. He sent messages about logistics that carried sharp edges. He asked questions that were not necessary. He tried to pull her back into old patterns of explanation and defense. Heidi answered only what was required. Short replies. Clear facts. Nothing more. Each boundary held made the next one easier. Some nights were harder. She would sit alone and replay moments from the marriage. She wondered how she had missed so many signs. She wondered why it took her so long to speak. Then she remembered something important. She had survived by staying quiet. Silence had once protected her. She did not shame herself for that anymore. Her mother visited often. They drank tea at the small kitchen table. They talked about simple things, gardening, weather, books. One afternoon, her mother reached across the table and held Heidi's hand. "You're back," she said. Heidi smiled. Her eyes filled. She squeezed her mother's fingers. Brianna became a steady presence again. They hiked on weekends. They laughed about old memories. Some conversations were heavy. Others were light. Both felt real dots slowly. Heidi's body relaxed. Her shoulders dropped. Her voice grew stronger. The divorce was finalized on a clear autumn morning. Leaves covered the sidewalk in bright colors. Heidi walked out of the courthouse alone. She stood still for a moment and let the sun warm her face. She felt whole. Travis tried one. Last time to regain control after the divorce, he spread stories among shared acquaintances. He painted himself as misunderstood. He said Heidi was unstable. Some people believed him. Many did not. Heidi did not respond. She had learned that truth did not need defense. Months passed. News reached her through others. Travis struggled at work. His temper showed. His charm failed. People saw what she had lived with for years. Eventually, he left the city. Heidi did not celebrate his failure. She felt only distance. Her apartment slowly filled with color. Plants by the window, photos on the walls, books stacked everywhere, every item chosen freely. She set her own routines: morning walks, evening reading, quiet dinners when she wanted them. Sometimes she thought about the rules, how carefully they had been written, how fragile they really were. Control had looked solid. It had not been. One boundary had been enough. Late one night, Heidi sat by the window and watched the street below. Cars passed. Lights flickered. Life moved forward. She placed her hand on the glass and felt calm. She knew healing was not finished. Some memories still waited in dark corners. But she also knew this: she would never disappear again. And as she turned off the light and stepped into her bedroom, she sensed that a final chapter was still forming. Just ahead, time passed in a slow and careful way. Healing did not move in a straight line. Some days felt light and open. Other days felt heavy again. Heidi learned to accept both without judgment. She no longer rushed herself to feel better. She allowed feelings to come and go. Her apartment became a place of safety. The quiet no longer startled her. It welcomed her. She slept deeply most nights. When she woke from old dreams, she reminded herself where she was. She reminded herself that no one would question her choices in the morning at work. Her confidence continued to grow. The senior analyst role brought new challenges. Meetings were longer. Decisions carried weight. Heidi handled them well. She trusted her training. She trusted her judgment. Colleagues began seeking her opinion, not out of habit, but respect. One afternoon, Deborah stopped by her office. She closed the door gently and smiled. "I knew this was coming," Deborah said. "You're doing excellent work." Heidi thanked her. The praise did not make her uncomfortable anymore. She'll let it land. She let it stay outside of work. Heidi rebuilt her social world slowly. She did not rush into crowds. She chose depth over noise. Coffee with one friend felt better than a room full of strangers. Brianna invited her to a small gathering one evening. Just a few people. Warm food, soft music. Heidi hesitated at first. Then she said yes. She laughed that night. Real laughter. It surprised her. Later, alone in her apartment, she noticed how easy breathing felt. Her chest no longer felt tight. Her thoughts no longer raced ahead in fear. Still, reminders of the past appeared without warning. A sharp tone from a stranger. A sudden silence in a room. A question asked with authority. Each time, her body reacted first. Her heart sped up. Her shoulders tensed. Then her mind caught up. She reminded herself she was safe. She reminded herself she was free. The legal process fully ended, but echoes remained. Travis sent one final message months later. It was long. It spoke of regret, of misunderstanding, of lost chances. He did not apologize clearly. He spoke mostly about himself. Heidi read it once. She did not reply. She deleted it. That choice felt powerful. Her therapist encouraged her to write, not to send letters, just to release words. Heidi filled pages with thoughts she never said aloud before. Anger, sadness, relief, hope. She wrote about the kitchen island, the paper, the calm voice reading rules. She wrote about the moment something inside her went quiet before it woke up. She realized something important during those sessions. The rules were never about order. They were about fear. Travis feared losing control. He feared being ordinary. He feared not being needed. That fear was not her burden to carry. One evening, Heidi visited her mother again. They cooked dinner together. Simple food, familiar smells. After eating, they sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange, then Pink Dot, her mother, spoke softly. "You learned something hard," she said. "But you learned it well." Heidi nodded. She rested her head briefly on her mother's shoulder. "I thought strength was loud," Heidi said. "I know now it can be quiet." Her mother smiled. When Heidi returned home that night, she felt grounded. She felt rooted in herself. Yet, even as peace grew, she knew growth would bring new challenges. She was no longer hiding. That meant she would be seen. And being seen required courage of a different kind at work. A new opportunity appeared. A leadership program. More visibility. More responsibility. Deborah encouraged her to apply. Heidi felt excitement. She also felt fear, not fear of Travis. Fear of her own past limits. She spent a night thinking. She remembered all the times she had said no to herself. All the times she made herself smaller. The next morning, she applied. When the acceptance email arrived weeks later, she stared at the screen for a long time. Then she smiled. Then she cried. This time, no one questioned her choice. Life continued to expand. Slowly, steadily. Then one afternoon, while walking home from work, Heidi noticed something unexpected. Its familiar car parked across the street. Her steps slowed. Her chest tightened. She told herself not to assume anything. Still, her body remembered before her mind could reason. She walked past the car, without stopping. Her phone buzzed minutes later. A message appeared on the screen. It was from Travis. And as Heidi stood there on the sidewalk, reading the first line, she realized that the past was reaching out once more, testing whether her boundaries would hold. Part 6. Heidi did not open the message. Right away, she stood still on the sidewalk, the late afternoon light slanting between buildings. Cars passed. Someone laughed nearby. Life continued as if nothing had changed. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. She took a breath. Then another. She reminded herself that she was not trapped anymore. A message was only words. Words could not control her unless she allowed them to. She opened it. Travis wrote that he was in town for work. He said seeing her street was an accident. He said he hoped she was well. He said he had been doing a lot of thinking. He ended the message by saying he would like to talk. Just once. For closure, Heidi felt the old reflex rise. The instinct to explain, too smooth. To keep peace. She let the feeling pass. She locked her phone and put it in her bag. She walked the rest of the way home with steady steps. Inside her apartment, she set her bag down and leaned against the door. Her heart was racing now, but her mind felt clear. She knew what closure meant to Travis. It meant control dressed up as reflection. She sat on the couch and waited until her breathing slowed. Then she turned her phone back on. She typed a short reply. She wrote that she wished him well. She wrote that she did not want contact. She asked him not to reach out again. She read the message twice. It was calm. It was firm. It owed him nothing. She sent it. The reply came quickly. He accused her of being cold. He said she was avoiding responsibility. He said she owed him a conversation after everything they had shared. Heidi did not respond. That silence felt different from the silence she used to carry. This one was chosen. This one protected her. Over the next few days, Travis tried again. Another message. Then another. Each one carried a sharper edge. He swung between regret and blame. Heidi saved everything. She did not answer. Her therapist called it boundary testing. She called it what it was. An attempt to regain influence. At work, Heidi stayed focused. She refused to let fear take over her routine. She arrived on time. She spoke in meetings. She laughed with coworkers. But at night, sleep came harder. Her dreams filled with echoes. Doors closing. Voices calling her name. She did not panic. She reminded herself that healing included moments like this. One evening, as she left the office, Deborah walked beside her to the parking lot. She asked if Heidi was all right. Heidi hesitated, then told her a small piece of the truth. Deborah listened. She did not interrupt when Heidi finished. Deborah said something simple. You don't owe access to anyone who harms your peace. Words settled deeply. The messages stopped after a week. Heidi did not know whether Travis accepted her boundary or simply grew bored. Either way, the silence that followed felt clean. She adjusted her routine slightly. Different walking routes. Better lighting near her building. Not out of fear, but care. She was not hiding. She was choosing safety. Weeks passed. The leadership program began. Heidi found herself in rooms filled with confident voices. She felt nervous at first. Then she spoke. Her thoughts were clear. Her ideas mattered. She noticed something surprising. No one tried to shrink her. She realized how much energy she once spent managing someone else's reactions. Without that weight, she felt capable of more than she imagined. One afternoon, she received a call from a number she did not recognize. She let it go to voicemail. The message was short. It was from Travis's sister. She said Travis was struggling. She said he talked about Heidi often. She said maybe Heidi could help him find peace. Heidi listened once. Then she deleted it. She did not feel cruel. She felt resolved. That night she wrote in her journal. She wrote about guilt, about how easily it still appeared, about how guilt was often mistaken for responsibility. She ended the entry with a sentence that surprised her. I am not required to set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. The weeks turned into months. Travis faded into the background of her life. Not erased, but distant. A chapter closed. One evening, Heidi stood in front of the mirror and studied her reflection. Her eyes looked clearer. Her posture was different. She smiled at herself. She knew she had passed a test, but life had a way of offering new ones, and soon, Heidi would face a challenge that had nothing to do with Travis at all. Part 7. The challenge came quietly, without warning. It did not arrive with raised voices or written rules. It arrived as opportunity. Halfway through the leadership program, Heidi was asked to take on an interim director role. The current director would be out for several months. The position meant authority, visibility, and pressure. It also meant stepping fully into a space she once believed she was not allowed to occupy. When Deborah asked her, Heidi felt two emotions at once. Excitement rose first. Fear followed closely behind. She did not answer immediately. That evening, she walked through her apartment, touching familiar objects. The plant by the window, the books on the shelf, the quiet she had built for herself. She thought about the version of herself who once declined a promotion because it made someone else uncomfortable. That version of her felt far away now. Still, the fear was real. This fear was different from the fear Travis created. This one came from standing fully visible with nothing to hide behind. Success meant accountability. It meant being seen clearly. The next morning, Heidi said yes. The role began fast. Meetings stacked up. Decisions came quickly. People looked to her for answers. She felt the weight of it, but she did not collapse under it. She prepared carefully. She listened. She spoke when it mattered. Some colleagues tested her authority. Subtle questions. Quiet resistance. She noticed it and addressed it directly, without anger. She did not try to be liked. She tried to be fair at home. She rested deeply. She protected her evenings. She cooked simple meals. She slept when she was tired. Balance no longer meant shrinking. It meant choosing what mattered. One afternoon, during a high-level meeting, a senior manager interrupted her repeatedly. His tone was sharp, dismissive, familiar. Her body reacted first. A flicker of old tension passed through her shoulders. Then she paused. She looked at him calmly and said, "Please let me finish. I'll give you the floor right after." The room went quiet. He leaned back. He nodded. She finished her point. After the meeting, two colleagues thanked her privately. They said it was good to see clear leadership. Heidi returned to her office and sat down slowly. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear, but release. She had handled it. The weeks continued. The role stretched her. She made mistakes. She corrected them. She asked for feedback. She trusted herself to learn. Outside of work, her life remained steady. She did not rush into romance. She did not seek distraction. She enjoyed solitude. Sometimes loneliness appeared. She acknowledged it. She did not try to fill it with noise. One weekend, she visited her mother again. They walked through a small park. Leaves crunched beneath their feet. Her mother watched her with quiet pride. "You stand differently," she said. Heidi smiled. "I feel different." As they walked, Heidi realized something. Her strength no longer came from resistance. It came from alignment. Her actions matched her values. That harmony gave her confidence. Near the end of the interim role, Deborah scheduled a meeting. She told Heidi the executive team was impressed. Very impressed. She offered Heidi the position. Permanently. Heidi felt a rush of emotion. Gratitude. Joy. A small ache for the woman she once was. Who doubted herself so deeply she accepted. That night, alone in her apartment, she opened a bottle of wine. She poured a glass and sat by the window. City lights flickered below. She raised the glass in a quiet toast. Not to success, but to self-trust. The past no longer defined her. It informed her. And as she looked toward the future, Heidi sensed that something else was changing. Not a threat. Not a test, a possibility. Something she was finally ready to welcome. Part 8. The possibility did not announce itself loudly. It arrived through ordinary moments. A conversation that lingered longer than expected. A laugh that felt easy. A sense of being seen without being measured. His name was Daniel. He worked in operations, 2 departments over from Heidi. They had crossed paths for years without really knowing each other. Now, with her new role, they found themselves in the same meetings more often. Daniel listened when others spoke. When he talked, his words were thoughtful, never rushed. One afternoon, after a long meeting, he walked beside her toward the elevators. He congratulated her on the permanent role. His tone was warm, not impressed, not competitive. "You handled that transition well," he said. "Not everyone could." Heidi thanked him. The exchange felt simple, respectful. Over the next weeks, their conversations grew naturally. Sometimes about work. Sometimes about books. Sometimes about nothing important at all. There was no pressure. No performance. Heidi noticed something unfamiliar. She did not feel watched. Daniel never corrected her tone. Never hinted at what she should do differently. When she disagreed, he listened. When she set a boundary, he accepted it without question. That alone felt extraordinary when he asked her to join him for coffee one Saturday. She paused, not from fear of him, but from awareness of herself. She checked in honestly. She realized she was curious, not lonely, not seeking reassurance. So she said yes. The cafe was quiet. Sunlight fell across the table. They talked for hours about childhood, about choices, about mistakes they had learned from. He did not rush intimacy. He did not probe for pain. When Heidi mentioned her divorce briefly and without detail, he nodded and said that must have been a lot. He did not ask her to explain. She noticed how her body stayed relaxed, how her laughter came easily, how silence did not feel dangerous. When they parted, there was no promise made, no expectation set, just warmth. Heidi walked home slowly that evening, aware of every step. She smiled to herself, surprised not by attraction, but by safety. She told her therapist about Daniel in their next session. The therapist smiled and asked one question. "How do you feel around him?" Heidi did not hesitate. "Like myself," she said. That felt like the right answer. They continued seeing each other gently, walks, dinners, long conversations. They moved at a pace that honored Heidi's healing. Daniel never pushed. When Heidi asked for space one week, he gave it freely. That too felt new. Still, old patterns whispered occasionally. A delayed text. A change in tone. Each time Heidi noticed the reflex and paused. She checked reality instead of memory. The difference was clear. Trust grew slowly, but it grew honestly. One evening, as they cooked dinner together at her apartment, Heidi caught herself humming. The sound surprised her. She had not hummed in years. Daniel noticed and smiled, but said nothing. Later, sitting on the couch, he reached for her hand. He waited until she looked at him. When she nodded, he held it gently. No ownership. No claim. Just presence. That night after he left, Heidi stood alone in her kitchen. The same place where rules had once been read aloud. The same counter. The same space. Everything felt different. She placed her hand on the cool surface and breathed deeply. She realized something then. Healing did not erase the past. It rewrote the future, and for the first time in a long while. Heidi felt hopeful, not because she had escaped something, but because she was choosing something still. Growth rarely moves without friction. And soon, Heidi would be asked to confront a truth she had not yet fully faced about herself. Part 9. The truth came not as a crisis, but as a quiet realization. It arrived on an ordinary evening when nothing was wrong. Heidi and Daniel sat across from each other at a small restaurant. The place was warm and familiar now. Candlelight flickered between them. Daniel talked about a project he was excited about. Heidi listened, smiling, present. And then she noticed something. She was managing the moment. Not out of fear. Out of habit, she caught herself choosing words carefully, shaping her responses to keep the energy smooth. It was subtle, automatic, a reflex she thought she had. Outgrown, the realization startled her. Daniel had given her no reason to do this. He was open, kind, consistent, yet some part of her still believed. Harmony required effort, adjustment, softening herself just a little. She felt a wave of sadness. Not sharp, but deep, after dinner. As they walked outside, she slowed her steps. She took a breath and spoke. "There's something I need to say," she told him. Daniel stopped. He turned fully toward her. He waited. She told him about the habits she had just noticed. About how control had trained her to monitor herself constantly. About how healing did not mean the patterns disappeared all at once. She did not ask him to fix it. She did not apologize. She just told the truth. Daniel listened carefully. When she finished, he nodded. "Double quotes, thank you for trusting me with that," he said. "I want you to take up space. All of it. You don't need to manage anything with me." The words landed gently, without promise or pressure. They walked the rest of the way quietly. Not awkward. Thoughtful. Later that night, alone in her apartment. Heidi sat on the floor with her back against the couch. She let herself feel the grief she had avoided. Grief for the years she spent adjusting instead of expanding. Grief for how deeply those patterns had settled into her body. She cried softly. Not from pain alone, but recognition. This, too, was healing. In therapy. She spoke about it openly. Her therapist nodded and said something that stayed with her. Survival skills don't vanish when danger ends. They need to be thanked before they can rest. That changed how Heidi saw herself. She stopped fighting the reflexes. She noticed them. She thanked them. She chose differently when she could. At work, she practiced the same awareness. She allowed disagreement. She let silence exist without filling it. She trusted that clarity did not require constant effort. With Daniel, she practiced honesty in small ways. Saying when she was tired. Saying when she needed time. Saying when something mattered to her each time. Nothing bad happened. Trust deepened. One weekend, Daniel invited her to a gathering with his friends. Heidi hesitated. Old fears stirred. Being evaluated. Being compared, she told him honestly that she was nervous. He smiled gently. "We can leave whenever you want." They went. The evening was relaxed. No pressure. No expectations. Heidi found herself laughing, telling stories, forgetting to monitor herself. Laughing, telling stories, forgetting to monitor herself. On the drive home, she rested her head against the window and smiled. Another layer had loosened. Still, a question began to form inside her. One she could not ignore much longer. Who was she, now that she no longer defined herself by endurance? The question followed her in quiet moments. On walks. In the mornings. In stillness. It was not frightening. It was an invitation. And Heidi knew that answering it would require the deepest kind of honesty yet. Part 10. Heidi did not rush to answer the question. She let it sit with her, unfolding slowly. For most of her life, she had defined herself by what she could withstand. Patience, loyalty, endurance. Those traits had once kept her safe. But they were not the whole of her. She began paying attention to what energized her, not just what she survived. On quiet mornings, she noticed how much she loved stillness. Not the fearful silence of the past, but chosen quiet. She read before work. She wrote again, not to process pain, but to explore ideas. She discovered she liked learning simply for the sake of it. At work, she mentored younger colleagues. She listened to their doubts and recognized her former self in them. She never told them to be smaller. She told them to be clear. She told them to trust their instincts. The words felt right in her mouth with Daniel. The relationship continued to grow in a way that felt grounded. They spoke openly about boundaries, about pace, about independence. Love did not feel like sacrifice. It felt like addition. One evening, as they cooked together, Daniel asked her a simple question. "What do you want your life to feel like?" Heidi did not answer right away. She thought of the kitchen island years ago. The paper, the rules, the quiet moment when she chose herself for the first time. Then she smiled. "Spacious," she said. "I want it to feel spacious." "Ka?" Daniel nodded, as if that made perfect sense. That night, after he left, Heidi stood alone in her apartment once more. The same place where she had rebuilt herself piece by piece. She looked around at the life she had chosen intentionally. She realized the answer had been forming for a long time. She was not just someone who escaped control. She was someone who valued fairness. Someone who spoke with care and clarity. Someone who led without shrinking others. Someone who chose presence over performance. She was someone who made rules only with consent. And lived without needing them. Months later, on an ordinary morning, Heidi sat at her kitchen counter with a mug of coffee. Sunlight filled the room. The coffee was still warm. She smiled at the quiet. There were no lists on the table. No expectations waiting to be enforced. Only the day ahead, open and undecided. She thought again of that one rule she had spoken long ago. The rule that changed everything. Equality or nothing. She carried it differently now. Not as defiance, but as truth. Heidi stood, picked up her keys, and stepped into her life fully present. Fully herself and free. And free.